Tuyet nekotet Masikos Griffin eng taonitab Nairobi koma stakeholders choto kole mitei barak kelchinoik cheimuchi konyoru kabatik ak chemung'arainik yekites chepkondok chekitobonjini sekta noto.
Hi, I'm Kristen Peterson. I'm the Sprout platform lead, and Sprout is an open agriculture platform, digital agriculture platform that's designed to build opportunity, knowledge, and information for smallholder farmers across Africa. And so we're a project of Mercy Corps Agrifin, and we've been around for about 3 years. And our vision is that every farmer across Africa should have in the palm of their hands information that can allow them to make better decisions about their farm and their community so that they can get better productivity and earn more income. So how do we do that? We've built an ecosystem across Africa, but we started in Kenya, and our biggest group of ecosystem members are in Kenya. And what our ecosystem is we work with expert organizations, CalRO, the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization, and other organizations that have expert content for farmers. And we take that content, we work with them, content and services, and we turn that into digital-ready, farmer-friendly content and services for farmers so that they can take that content and use it. But we don't stop there. Farmers don't work with us directly. We work with farmer-facing organizations. So organizations who have the trust and the reach of farmers. We work with about 40 organizations across Kenya who reach millions of farmers. They take this content and they turn it into information that they engage the farmers with, and they get it out in SMS format or IVR format, USSD format, and work with the farmers to engage them to build their skills and capabilities and ultimately their yields. Content is good agricultural practices and other types of content that's similar for farmers. So content around financial literacy for farmers and how to better run a farm financially. And so we get that content from expert organizations like CalRO, like CGIAR, who's a global research organization, but a lot of times it's big technical presentations, and we take it and condense it into SMS format, IVR format, USSD format, so that the organizations can take it and integrate it into their systems to work with farmers. And so farmers can consume it. So we've got it in English, Kiswahili, and other languages. We also do weather services. So we do hyper-local weather services for farmers. So not just good agriculture like crops and animal husbandry, livestock, but we also do weather. And so we do hyper-local weather based on the farmer's location or their market location. And so our partner, the farmer-facing organization, just uploads it and requests a formatted SMS that gives them a 7-day forecast that they send out to the farmers in whatever channel they want. So farmers can make decisions about planting, about spraying, about weeding, and about going to market. And what we're finding, and we're starting to get really interesting results, is that farmers who are using our services in combination with the organization that they work with are getting really amazing results with their yields. We're getting some great data. Our first data is from Nigeria, but it's showing that they're doubling their yields. And they're really excited about the services. And so that's what we do. Challenges for farmers. In Kenya, what we see is that Kenyans are digital forward, and they're really interested in new technologies and new information. A lot of the Kenyan farmers that we've surveyed want more information, but it's hard to get that information. If they get it, it's hard to determine what's the best information to use. And so what we look to do is streamline and make available good scientific-backed content on a range of crops and livestock so they can take it and adopt it. And so the challenges they face not only are accessing that information, but deciding which one to use and knowing where it's coming from, how to trust it. And so working with local organizations that work with the farmers that they trust, those organizations work with us, and we work with very trustworthy data. So we think that it's really important to meet farmers in what they need and with trustworthy information. And so I think those two areas are really important. It's getting them better information to make decisions and making sure that information is trustworthy.
My name is Betty Nduku, and I work for an organization called LERSHA. LERSHA is a mobile application that enables smallholder farmers to access input, mechanization, advisory services, and market linkage. So the model that LERSHA works with is where we have a call center where the farmers can be able to receive advisory services either through SMS or voice blast. We also have an agent network that bridges the gap between the smallholder farmer and the digital services, because most farmers don't have the smartphones, they have the feature phones. And we also have a call center. I said a call center, a platform, and an agent network. So this is where we bring in the youth who are digitally enabled and who maybe come from an agricultural background to be able to support the farmers to access the services. Yes.
Okay, so what kind of services you offer to the farmers? And you said what languages? Is it because we know that some of the farmers maybe are in the languages? That information is in which languages?
So the information is in the local language. So for example, we are operating in several regions in Ethiopia. So maybe we'd have Amharic, we'd have other languages in the various regions. So it is in the local language to enable farmers to understand, because we also understand that there's an issue with the literacy levels. Yeah. So currently we are just trying to run our pilot in Kenya, starting with Western Kenya. So this is the Nyanza region. So we'd have the Dholuo. We try to customize our advisory in that language, but we're still in the process of doing that. So again, we've been operating in Ethiopia for the last 8 years, and it's been very instrumental there. We've seen farmers report increase in incomes from the services they're receiving. Now, as we introduce the access to finance component, it's even building more traction as farmers are able to access now the proper inputs and all these mechanization services that we're talking about to enable them to boost their production. And we know agriculture is the backbone of Africa, the economic activity in Africa. So if we improve agriculture, we're sure that we're improving the livelihoods of the people. For the advisory part, the farmers don't pay for that. Actually, the pay is just when they're accessing the inputs. Then the same way they would have to buy the inputs, the seeds, the fertilizer, that's where the farmer has to go back to their pockets. Yes, so this is what I'm talking about. So most farmers have feature phones, and we don't blame anybody for that. They have the feature phones, so with feature phones they can access the advisory using USSD, or they can receive the messages, they can receive the voice blasts for them to listen to them. But we have the agent network, which are the digitally enabled youth. Those ones are the ones who must have the smartphones, because they can transact on behalf of the farmer who does not have the smartphone. Yes. So that's the paying point of the farmer.
So how many?
So again, currently in Ethiopia, we have over 200,000 farmers. We're hoping for even bigger numbers here as we're just starting. So we're just trying to assess this market to see what reach we can have in the next 2-5 years, see what model will work in this market.
My name is Florine Kaino Chokoech. I work with Masiko Kenya, implementing a program called Adaptation Services for Action and Learning as their geospatial advisor. So Masiko Kenya mostly works in ASAL counties. We are currently present in 11 counties. We're implementing different programs, touching different thematic areas, including economic opportunities, water security, livelihoods, and climate resilience or climate change solutions. We have different programs that are designed along these different thematic areas, and of course they're aligned within the specific regions that we work with, the specific county that we work with. I'll specifically talk about the ASAL Adapt program, which is a program funded by Google and Cisco. It's a technology-based program. Our agenda is to support the county governments and the communities in Garissa and Wajir Wajir to utilize data and digital technology for decision making when it comes to rangeland management. So we work along, again, three key thematic areas. One of them is rangeland management, where we are implementing the participatory rangeland management model. We work with communities. We currently work with about 7-8 communities to each develop their own localized grazing plans, which basically is mapping out their rangeland resources, including water, and planning where do they want to graze within the different seasons, identifying the degraded areas, and now planning interventions around those degraded areas. These interventions include reseeding, where we use the resilience design model to reseed these areas, especially before the onset of long rains, like the OND rains that are about to come, and this basically regenerates the area. We also have part of their rangeland management plans. They also develop bylaws of how, so we're also affecting the governance structure of their rangeland areas. So how do they want to utilize these rangelands? Where do they want to, or how do they enforce these guidelines that they are giving? Part of that as well, based on the conflict hotspot areas that they've highlighted, they also develop resource sharing agreements with their neighboring communities so that they can, because most of these conflicts are resource-based conflicts, so they basically agree how they can share these common pastures and common rangeland resources to better or to basically curb with conflicts that arise due to resources. The second component that we work with is the climate information services. As you know, Garissa and Wajir receives the climatic shocks, or are really affected by the climatic shocks, floods, drought. We have both extremes. So with climate information services, of course, we look at, or kind of develop and participate in anticipatory action. So we look at predictions or anticipate, kind of build scenarios of what we expect, especially in the main rainy seasons and the main dry seasons, and then develop advisories and activities around those scenarios that we've built. So we work closely with the county government, with stakeholders, and even communities to give them advisories of, you guys, floods is coming, please harvest, because most of the farms are found along the river. So kindly harvest, because that will also be affected, and move away from the river to just get to safer grounds for that. We are now also pushing for these advisories to even support the kind of restoration, that is when it comes to the roads that are being built. As you know, we are always affected by the floods because our roads are always cut. Currently, a lot of construction is going on along the road. So again, telling them, they could be doing all this, and then on October, November, all of that is washed out again. So giving very complex hydrological analysis to show where the laggards flow, and that informs now where do they put the box culverts, where do they put the bridges, based on the historical information of how floods has been affecting the different infrastructure. The third aspect that we work in is called Geographical Information Systems, GIS. So we also empower the county government to utilize GIS for decision making and development planning. What is GIS? GIS is basically working with spatial or locational analytics. So we've worked with the county government of Garissa and Wajir to develop an integrated spatial data infrastructure, which basically brings in information from different departments, ensuring they're up to date, so they're always updated, and developing insights that can now be used by the executive and the administration and other stakeholders to make decisions. So planning is not done, or development is not done haphazardly, but planning and development is done based on data. We normally call it spatial justice when it comes to resource deployment. So part of it, as well as our sustainability plan, we've also worked with Garissa University to develop, again, GIS courses that are relevant to natural resource management, to just build the capacity of communities to utilize GIS and observation information services, come up with analytics that they can use to advise or to inform the activities and even the interventions that they give, especially with the different extreme weather conditions that may come within the period. Okay, so Geospatial or GIS is basically working with spatial data. Spatial data is locational information. So once you have this locational information, locational data, and of course their accompanying attribute information, it now gives you the opportunity to talk about modeling, artificial intelligence, where you now, for example, in the agricultural sector, you'd use data to now develop AI models that would do different predictions. Maybe a model where a crop would do well over the other one based on specific conditions. So I'd say we are opening now the county governments to having that discussion, to even be able to utilize the models that are available, even develop models that are convenient for them. We are trying to downscale climate information services, and we are using most of the climate information that comes is usually very high level. So downscaling it to the word level using now these models, these AI models is what we are currently doing, or what would be the end result of all this. So AI is an opportunity. Let me say that. I would say so. Of course, we have our impact numbers, but for me, I like measuring impact with social behavioral change. Have we left them better than we found them? And once we leave, will they go back to how they were, or have we influenced their behavior and changed how they do? One, I'd say yes. Especially in the data side, we've shown value for data, especially for county governments, why they need to use data, why data is important to them. And I'll give a good example. Initially, a lot of data was being collected by the national government using the county government staff, but information would come, or the results of this would come as, say, PDF reports and all that. So they are not remaining with data to utilize it for long-term analysis and all that. But with this, the county government has a resource on its own, an infrastructure on its own, understands the value of data, and ensures that they have information that they can use to model different kind of products. They can use to even analyze how over time services has changed in terms of provision, situations has changed in terms of infrastructure and resources and stuff like that. In terms of rangeland management, yes, again, working on the systemic level, where now communities are seeing, before, because we are not planning our rangelands, when drought hits, immediately we are affected and we need to go to Isiolo, and then now we fight with Isiolo because they've planned their grazing areas, so they have better pasture. But now when we plan our grazing areas, we know we are now building long-term resilience, that when drought comes, we have some fodder reserves for a bit of period of time before we now say we are migrating to another area to be able to get this pasture.
What I'm focusing on are these two. That's why I'll talk about them. Difficulties in user adoption, which we see, challenges around digital language literacy, cost, relevance, timeliness, and awareness of these solutions. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about AI in this presentation. So that is something we're really looking at seriously. I mean, it's again, not a silver bullet, but we do feel it's going to overcome a lot of those challenges I just mentioned. Because if you have a richer conversational interface with the user, they're able to ask questions, get answers to those questions when they need them. We don't have to sort of try to predict when farmers need information to send a text message out. It's being requested. And you actually get a lot of data and feedback that way too. So just two examples we've been experimenting with. One is virtual agronomists with ISDA. And they're seeing a 66% increase in yield through farmers that use this system. 48% of the farmers on this chart in green are getting over 4 tons per hectare. And those less than 2 is the median for the traditional farmers. And then another example is Digital Green. They've been deploying farmer.chat. And that's really fascinating to look at the data. They have 300,000 queries over the last year to look at. And you start to see, okay, what are farmers asking about? It's surprisingly in Kenya, it's not maize. It's more about other crops, dairy and poultry and coffee, things they want to move to. I think they all know how to grow maize in Kenya. Everybody does. Collins, I'm sure, has a farm somewhere with some maize. But the grid here shows like the breakdown of, over time, across the horizontal axis and vertically, the different topics that farmers are asking about. So just imagine this is real-time information that you can get and incorporate into your designs. Then finally, I'll just finish on lack of supporting infrastructure. I think this, your interpretation, people might think that means, okay, hardware, networks, fiber optic. But it also means, sorry, I lost my slide for a second. It also means things like data, farmer registries, environmental information, weather, soils, pricing data, etc. And we're starting to see some really interesting examples of, Siaka mentioned, digital public infrastructure. So these are, I think a lot of people think this means all things data, all things digital, but it's really very specifically more about the protocols that enable scale to occur. So examples that are used to describe a classic DPI, the GPS standard, or the internet is essentially a DPI. It's a standard, the HTTP protocol. GSMA was stood up as an association to collaborate with different MNOs to develop the GSM standard. So these types of protocols and standards enable scale to occur. So the question is, how do we apply those principles to agriculture around ID, digital credentialing, tailored services based on farmer registries, broadcast and fulfillment of products, payments and unified payment services. We're seeing some great examples come out of India with AgriStack being developed at a national level. And there's a team here from the Open AgriNet to look at global network for agricultural knowledge and resources and protocols to share that type of information. So I think this is sort of the exciting places where we're looking at is around AI and DPI in agriculture. We feel like that's the next step to sort of enable a lot of these solutions to scale, as Siaka was suggesting. And all the pictures I've shown on this presentation have been AI generated. This is the only one that's not, because I just want to remind ourselves that we're talking about real people, real people's lives. Things happen, COVID happened in this case, and we need to design our systems to really address this person's problems.
The company that we've been engaging recently is a Kenyan company, which provide first mile data for farming. And one of the great things that they I think it's more like a luck than anything else. They went to Uganda, and there is a PPP which is aggregating 13 insurance companies. And all of a sudden, they have like a whole consortium of over 1 million farmers. And these companies providing AI in a way to collect first mile data and provide more granularity. And then they provide that platform to the overall consortium. All of a sudden, from a single step, they have access to almost 1 million farmers in less than a year. So to me, this is the role of PPP. PPP provide that basic infrastructure in terms of organization and in terms of physical infrastructure, on top of which now, startups that are providing really, really interesting and insightful solutions can just all of a sudden tap on. If you do not have that, you have to go after one farmer after other for 1 million. It's just not sustainable. So it's super important when we have this discussion with policymakers to know that once they put the regulation and the infrastructure in place, now technology is a best way to scale things and do things that you couldn't do one by one.
Popped into my head first was the idea that we have very vibrant rural economies. And one of the reasons we do is because of the communities that are already in place and the community mechanisms and ecosystems, to even use that word, that are already working for those communities. And so if we could do one thing with connecting that digital ecosystem is to amplify what's already working in these communities and enable them to do more with the networks and the opportunities that they have and that they see.
Kabotik chemengech che kwonyik kotesetai kobune kewelutik chechang cheboto logoiwekab komonut chemabitunotin ak rurutik cheng'ering kobaten kasimchinetab boisiet nebo muswoknotetab kasari chekikomuktechi ichek konyoru logoiwek cheititotin ak kotes kabotisieng'wany.
Names are Siaka Gatabaki. I am the program director for Mercycorps Agrifin. Mercycorps Agrifin is part of an international NGO, which is the Mercycorps NGO. That is an NGO that works across 40 countries around the globe. with the Mercy Corps AgriFin program, primarily focused on how digital technology and digital solutions can improve the lives of smallholder farmers. Over the last 12 years, we represent an investment of over 50 million from various donors that have looked towards developing solutions, testing solutions, and deploying those solutions at scale. We are gathered today here for this conference as part of the 8th annual learning event that AgriFin is hosting that is looking at how we could enable better development in rural populations, leveraging digital technologies that support better outcomes for smallholder farmers. Those outcomes being increase in resilience, increase in productivity, and of course, increase in incomes. Over the last 12 years or so, we have reached over 17 million farmers across multiple countries, including Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Nigeria, India, and Indonesia, and we continue to grow. As a program, we do believe that if you develop solutions that focus on key strategic areas like market access for smallholder farmers, that focus on access to financial services and use of those financial services in a healthy way that improves their ability to produce more, the farmer's ability to produce more. If you also focus on agronomic advice that gives the farmers the right kinds of skills and knowledge to execute on their farms, as well as precision information such as weather that enables them to make the right decisions around how they should grow, when they should grow, what they should grow in different geometrical climates, then we definitely expect that those farmers will increase their productivity and incomes. The way the program works is that it focuses a lot on private and public sector actors to identify what are the challenges they are facing in delivering solutions to smallholder farmers. And we've identified a number of challenges over the years, from their business model, from their go-to-market strategies, from partnerships that they require to enable them to scale their solutions, but as well the funding that they would need to grow as a business to execute on their mandates. And one of the important instruments or programs that we have then designed with the Gates Foundation and Brighter Bridges is a platform that is really focused on how they can actually access this investment. That title again, because I also have to read it. Is it here? Enabling rural economies, creating lasting impact for the digital ecosystem in Africa. I think in a simple sense, what we have found out over the years is that when you look at ecosystem transformation, you need an enabling environment. And what I mean by an enabling environment is that you need a platform or a situation where actors collaborate or identify points of collaboration or points of synergy that allows them to form partnerships that can support progressive solutions that really help the smallholder farmer. By that enabling environment, it means that you have to speak to various actors. And who are the actors that create an enabling environment? You have the NGOs, who are part of the development and civic sector. You have the private sector companies that, even though they are profit-oriented, cannot sell their products and services because of the costs entailed in terms of reaching agricultural markets or the risks in acting in that particular market. And then, of course, you have the public sector, the government, that creates policies that really support the growth of the economies. And, of course, as their primary mandate is really to improve the livelihoods of the people within their boundaries. So this conference is a convening where we expect that the conversations around how that enabling environment can be better prospered or better supported so that tools, solutions, and approaches can be designed for purpose for different smallholder farmers and small-scale producers in the countries that we serve. We have participants from not only Kenya, but a lot of other countries where we operate that are bringing in their knowledge, their perspectives, and their solutions so that we have a community of practice where we share our journeys. You all saw the speech from one of the ag tech companies in this industry that had successfully scaled their solution and then at some point had to wind up. So understanding what are those factors that lead to scale and what are those factors that could impede scale are some of the things that we have to understand as we're trying to develop and build a strong and sustainable ecosystem. One of the panelists spoke about the fact that once you educate and support a woman, you educate and support a village. Yeah? Women are a core part of the economy, and we have found from our research that many women who get supported invest their additional incomes into the household expenses that are critical for the resilience of that household. So we find women who are making additional money from their agricultural practices, invest that money in school fees, in health. To some degree, as he was mentioning, funding follows the money. Yeah? But also what we want to do is by collecting data and gathering the right kinds of information, we can get to a position where we direct funding to places where it's needed most. Now, this is not always possible, but with the right intention and the right data that justifies why, if you make an investment here within this time frame, you'll be able to then reap the returns. One of the statistics that he mentioned in terms of the increased funding to women founders, to women run or operated organizations, has been growing largely because there's been an intentional investment from donors and different parties, even private sector investors, to actually focus on gender as an issue and to close that gender gap. And the reason why they're doing this is because from a private sector perspective, we have seen that there are positive returns when you have women founders or women in the executive teams of founding companies. And that diversity allows for new ideas, new approaches, and enables those organizations to reach sustainability and profitability a lot faster. So we see investment following those kinds of trends. We've seen another trend where there's a lot of investment in climate. Yeah? And that only started because there was a whole conversation around the world is facing a dire situation. If we do not change where we are right now, yeah, then we'll reach a point where it's irreversible. So investment has been moving towards climate. What we aim to do is point out what are those things that investment needs to go into before it becomes a problem, before it becomes an issue. If we had thought about all the issues around climate before people started talking about where we are facing ourselves right now, perhaps would have stemmed this a lot sooner and would have changed policies, would have changed our approaches towards agriculture and various other sectors in the economy. And we've known for a long time that the cooperative movement is a strong movement supporting farmers, and we've built some significant cooperatives across the continent, and in Kenya in particular. One of the challenges that cooperatives face is that they are very expensive to operate. Yeah? They need a lot of staff, they use a lot of manual processes that has made them not a viable way to continue to serve farmers as they used to in the past. Now, if you bring technology into that context, help them digitize their operations. Number one, you reduce costs, the cost of transferring information from paper, etc., and understanding paper ledgers, understanding where the farmer is at, what does the farmer need, etc., etc. By digitizing the cooperative, you're able to then give them the right data points. You're able to allow them to reduce the cost that they incur in serving farmers. So you digitize the cooperative, you can digitize the extension services that they provide to farmers, so they're able to access farmers not only with boots on the ground, but they can also digitally talk to farmers, communicate with farmers. You digitize the payment ecosystem, then these cooperatives are able to pay the farmers without having the farmer to walk to the nearest bank or the nearest cooperative branch to receive money. They can receive it on their phone. So technology plays such a critical role in making some of these things, like the cost of managing agriculture, a lot lower, so that then it's much more effective and much more profitable for not only farmers, but institutions in the agricultural sector. We truly believe through technology, we will start to see a lot more profitable agricultural-based companies. And that's always good for the economy writ large, as you get more institutions that are more sustainable and generating a lot more income and creating a lot more jobs therein.
David Saunders kobun Brita Bridges ko kaikimit kamanutietab kiyum logoiwek cheititotin ak ketokchi yoto chepkondok.
I'm a director at Brighter Bridges, a data and intelligence company that basically tracks investor activity into startup and digital businesses across Africa and emerging markets. So the initiative that we are partnering with Mercy Corps to implement is called AgBase. It's particularly focused on the agri-food tech ecosystem. And what I like about what you were saying, Sieka, is that we bring the supply side in terms of where the funding is coming from, and you bring the demand side, where it needs to go really to be impactful. And I think that's why we've been very excited about this collaboration, as you were just highlighting there. There's some really exciting areas where we're excited to work together to see how we can mobilize these different ecosystems to ultimately benefit farmers, not just in Kenya, but across Africa and potentially across emerging markets. How many women are participating in agriculture and where the opportunities are to either increase participation or improve participation. From our side, what we see on the ag tech side and the funding side is ag tech's a bit of an outlier in the startup ecosystem in Africa. It has one of the highest proportion of women startups with women founding teams. So just a quick statistic, nearly 30% of all funded ag techs over the last 10 years have had at least one woman founder. And 15% have had all founding teams. That is significantly higher than other sectors. So I think you're already seeing that the agricultural sector is well positioned to be very gender empowering. And I know we're two men saying that, which has its caveats with it. But as you see the team, the organizations we work with as well, you really get to feel and see that. And I think on the youth side, one of the things, I come from a financial inclusion background. And in the early 2010s, we used to say, how can we make financial inclusion attractive to youth? And I tell you, the minute that there was $1 billion exit for a fintech, it became very attractive to youth. So I think one of the things that we need to think about within ag tech and the startup space is, how do we attract more young people with their talents into that space? And I think we've seen it in climate, we're beginning to see it in ag. As we get more momentum, more funding going into the sector, people are seeing opportunities and it's attracting those young people to it. And I think we see that in some of the demographic data we have on AgBase, where the majority of startup founders in the ag tech space are between 18 and 35. So that's quite an exciting opportunity there in terms of women and youth within the agricultural space that I think together we really hope we can help mobilize and drive forward. Like I said, if we get that right, funding will follow. And I think what we shouldn't think about is the environment from 2021 to 2022, which was more supply driven, pushing money onto anything, particularly in the ag tech or startup space, being the norm. I think really funding typically follows those businesses, and those startups then can viably grow and scale their businesses. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do with AgBase, is increase the data and information on those. And I think the other thing that you saw, or maybe heard in the session as well, is the role that semi-commercial or non-purely commercial actors are playing. And they also have information that they want to follow, which is scaling up the impact. Really what iPrecure was showing in terms of really being able to improve the lives of farmers. So I think that if we get those bits right, which is really what I take away as the theme from this, is how do we really get rural economies agriculture is inherently rural, right? If we get those things right, well, urban farming may be changing a bit, but the majority of it is. If we get those things right, I think that's where funding will follow a lot. So a big part of what we're trying to do together is find out where that's working, improve the visibility of that, improve the information to allow funding to better follow it. Bringing each other in terms of ideas, but not just going to the right places, but also having the right financing mechanisms. I think one of the things that we've seen as well is a lot of the funding that came into ag tech over the last 4 or 5 years may not have been appropriate for the type of businesses they were. And we're seeing a lot more diversification now in terms of funding. So it's not all equity. We're seeing more debt that can support, asset heavier businesses that are really contributing to food production and such things. Within the climate space, there's a lot of concessionary and blended finance that's going in because we know initially we need to reduce the cost of certain types of products and solutions so we can get people to adopt them and start to migrate away from some of the things that may not be having positive impacts on the climate. So I think this idea of us not just being able to direct funding to the right place, but also being able to direct the right funding to the right place, I think is really where we see the potential of this information being able to play. Data we're seeing in terms of where funding's going or where new ag techs are emerging, I think we showed in the presentation, we're seeing more ag techs utilizing AI, and we're seeing more ag techs offering climate smart agricultural solutions. But I actually think the interesting stuff is more like what we're calling asset heavy. So it's more on the transportation, the logistics, the warehousing, the mechanization. It's a lot of the things that aren't the latest sexy trend, but are actually the stuff that's going to improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers and the overall value chains. And I think that's the really exciting stuff, because as we've moved away from venture capital is the only way to fund startups, and we're diversifying the type of funding instruments, all of a sudden those models become a lot more attractive. And that's what I really expect to see is, I don't want to call it back to the basics, but I think it'll be back to the basics with a bit of a digital technology shift. And I don't think we'll see as much. I think we'll see the sexy trends of AI and blockchain and these things struggling a bit more to find their commercial use cases and probably get there. But the real impact, I think, is going to come from what I was saying before.
And maybe to add something there, so a very
tuyet noton kokonu boroindo kengalane koimutik cheterter ak boroinwek chebitunotin en boisiet nebo muswoknotetab kasari.